on the, well, it's moving fast, the 28th day of July. I'm joined by Mr. Wesson. Should have Mr. Reyes, I believe, a little later. So, Mr. Clerk, what's before us?
Good morning, Council Member. We are considering a City Administrative Officer report relative to an alternative management structure for the Los Angeles Zoo and a request for authority to release a request for proposal for the zoo's operation and management. This item was continued from the special meeting of July 19th, 2011.
Great. And item number 2, would you just read that just for the record? I want to hear it now.
Certainly.
3.
Item number 2 is an adopted budget recommendation relative to a report from the Zoo Department on the privatization of the LA Zoo and the request for proposal process.
Correct, okay. And number 3?
And item number 3 is an adopted budget recommendation relative to reports from the City Administrative Officer and the Zoo Department on eliminating the remaining 26% of the Zoo Department's budget that is still reliant on the general fund. This item is also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee, and both items number 2 and number 3 were also continued from the July 19th Special Arts, Parks, Health, and Aging meeting.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. Do we have any cards for any public comment?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I would like to take these folks right here for cards. Thank you very much. Jason Elias, you can go first.
Yeah.
Okay.
I sneak in like that. You
I
can
know,
put me
I
first.
know. No, that's it. Wait, hold on a second. Yes, item number 1. I'm going to run a 1-minute clock today because I'm sure everybody's busy, but if you need a little more time, feel free to take it if you're not get all your words out. And I also want to call up Lisa. I want to say it, Gretschner, is that correct? Hi, Lisa. Oh, excuse me, Lisa, I should know that. Linda, Dr. Linda Gibbity, thank you very much. And Catherine Doyle, thank you.
So, just as an aside, yesterday, Councilmember Parks asked if DOT employees were on their own time while speaking in front of council, and our members are always on their own time on vacation speaking in front of council. So we have a group of folks coming from the zoo, so I hope you'll give them an opportunity to speak in a moment.
Right.
I've used 20 seconds just to say we
can start
continue.
the clock over. And on that particular issue here, I do believe in input from everybody. I know Mr. Parks has a feeling I didn't understand that. I know from time to time we do have employees come from a variety of departments, and whatever time it is, whether it's A time, B time, or C time, it's important to get all comments. That being said, Jason Elias.
We appreciate that. Thank you, council members. Jason Elias, SEIU Local 721, representing city employees. Just to reiterate our opposition to an alternative management structure, you'll hear from zoo employees who believe that they can continue to provide the best quality service at the zoo, public service. We think that there are other alternatives to consider before the nuclear option of selling the farm, so to speak. There are a lot of ways that we can increase revenue at the zoo. We have a lot of ideas. We've presented them to you, and we hope that you continue to consider those. And bottom line is, what's the rush? We need to think about how to maximize both the potentials of the zoo and not make any hasty decisions here. So I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Your turn.
Hi, I'm Lisa Garenser. Good morning. You've heard myself and several of my colleagues testify before you about their love of their jobs at the zoo. As a dedicated employee of the zoo department, I'd like to know what will happen to the staff when our current labor agreements end in 2014. The draft RFP states the proposer would have to uphold current labor agreements, but it does not speak to future bargaining. In the next series of labor negotiations, will the city management be seeking to remove contracting out provisions from our MOUs? This information is vital to know before the RFP is released. I am not prepared to have my future left to the decision of any potential proposer to the RFP. And should a decision be made to transfer the common class zoo employees into other departments, the bumping of city employees out of their current positions will be taking place. the city simply does not have enough vacant funded positions to absorb the zoo staff. Do not move forward with the RFP process. It is evident that the unknowns outweigh the potential benefits. Privatizing the zoo is not the right choice for the residents, the animals, or the employees. Keep the zoo department intact. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Ms. Doyle? Either way.
I'm happy to go. Linda Gibney. I would like to suggest that privatization sounds like an excellent idea. I think we should take our cues from those officials who would like to privatize. But if we're going to do it, let's do it right so we really maximize the money that we make. And that is, we close the current zoo, put the animals in a sanctuary, and then we create one of the most dazzling metro media kinds, mixed media adventures for that property. We have got amazing resources in this state, the likes of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and the architectural community, the universities, all kinds of resources, the entertainment industry that could help us really build a great combination of the Smithsonian and Disneyland. And I think we would have investors lining up to invest in something like this. And we wouldn't need one single solitary, depressed, incarcerated animal to do it.
What did you teach at UCLA?
I was a teacher trainer.
Teacher trainer, very good.
Okay, my name is Catherine Doyle, and I speak as a citizen and on behalf of In Defense of Animals and its thousands of LA supporters. Different from art museums, the zoo contains living animals that require the best care possible, and the zookeepers are key to that care. Our concern is that as more zookeepers would be hired under a new private management at lower pay, the quality of care will suffer, and simply put, you get what you pay for. I'm further alarmed that the CAO's report recommends that the Zoo Commission stand in for both an Animal Welfare Oversight Committee and a governing board that would meet publicly two of the mayor's recommendations. We need an Animal Welfare Oversight Committee if this is to go forward. LA Zoo management has been responsible for serious welfare problems, and the zoo was fined under the by the USDA, and it has failed to provide documents under the California Public Records Act. If these problems occurred under city management, I have great concerns about what would happen under a private operator. Contrary to the CAO's report, AZA accreditation does not guarantee welfare. I'm going to give you just one of many examples of problems at AZA zoos. In 2009, media exposed the deaths of 11 animals at the Topeka Zoo in cover-up attempts. The deaths included a hippo who suffered a fatal seizure after being discovered in 108-degree water. And two small animals also died who were infested with maggots. That same year, the AZA recognized this very same Topeka Zoo director for his efforts as an accreditation inspector for other zoos. So AZA zoos are not without their problems. The LA Zoo has had an oversight committee in the past that did good work, but after Mr. Lewis became general manager, the committee was no longer convened. And as much as I know the zoo commissioners care about animals, they lack the expertise in animal welfare and cannot take on this important task. The CAO also recommended that instead of a governing board that would hold public meetings, zoo commission meetings would suffice. And they would not. The commission cannot implement policy and would bear no responsibility or control over decisions made by a private operator. The public has the right to hear directly from a governing board in a public forum about decisions and policies concerning the zoo and to raise important questions and have them directly answered. The Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle has such a board. Unfortunately, the RFP gives plenty of lip service to animal welfare, but does not fully protect the animals and therefore should not go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a question, Ms. Doyle, you said the Woodland Zoo in Seattle has one of these committees, but
They have a board of directors, right, that meets publicly.
But that meets your approval?
I would say it's an improvement, yeah.
Right, and, okay, good. And San Diego?
Actually, I don't believe they have, no, I don't
Right,
believe they have a
okay.
board that meets publicly.
Very good. But Woodland Zoo is a model if we looked at.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, those are cards that have stated that they have great concerns about this proposal. And then I also want to call other cards. Ann Williams, Gary Tobin, Connie Morgan, Lisa Carrero, Hi.
Good morning. I'm Ann Williams with the Central City Association. We're here to support the proposal to release an RFP for zoo operation. It's time that the city get back to basics of delivering core services to Angelenos. The CAO's report clearly shows that the zoo is going to become an increasingly heavy financial burden in the immediate future, and that the result will be a slow starvation of the zoo through a decreasing general fund subsidy. Well, I think that if you love the zoo, set it free. Give the zoo the opportunity to find an operator who will have greater flexibility and can breathe new life into one of our city's greatest assets, just like the Hollywood Bowl and the LA County Museum of Art and scores of zoos across the country. We urge you to embrace a more modern model of zoo operations and move forward with the RFP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tobin.
Gary Tobin with the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, here to support the proposal for going out for an RFP. The city's current financial condition has created the need to review both long and short-term operational changes to address the city's current structural deficit. Generating long-term general fund savings by capping and eventually eliminating the general fund subsidy to the Los Angeles Zoo will save the city money and provide the Los Angeles Zoo with greater flexibility to enhance the visitor experience and maximize its ability to generate revenue. A review of zoos around the country reveals that almost all zoos involve some sort of public-private partnership. And I dare to say that it was not the nuclear option for the San Diego Zoo, the Woodland Zoo in Seattle, the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago, the Denver Zoo, or the Atlanta Zoo. This is a practice that is used all around the country in the finest zoos in the country. I urge you to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Want to go? Okay, Connie. Lisa, you want to go?
Okay, I'll
Okay,
go.
Lisa.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Correa, and I'm currently the membership manager at Glaza. We have over 73,000 member households all over Los Angeles. I worked for Glaza for over 26 years, starting out as a teenager in concessions and then managing our database. I've been in my current position for over 11 years. I want you to know that many of us working at Glaza are longtime employees. I feel like I've always been treated well as a Glaza employee. We have great benefits and flexibility, and we all work well together no matter what department we're in. We know what we do has a positive impact to the zoo. Just like the city employees, I'm worried about my job too, if there is a change in the management at the zoo, but I also think that both groups working together will make the zoo better than ever. Personally, I think the possibilities for the zoo are really exciting. Many changes have happened at the zoo since I started, and I know changes will happen in the future. If you move the RFP forward, there will be new ideas offered on how to manage the zoo through a new community partnership. Thank you all for your time.
Mr. Reyes has a quick question.
Yes, I just wanted to first thank you for being here, but second, when you say you work in the zoo,
Yes.
in what capacities? Can you share that?
Well, I started when I was 16. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, but in what capacity, like in what functions?
Well, I started out in the concession stand, and then I went into database, and I managed our database for our members. And right now, I'm membership manager at the Los Angeles Zoo,
I see. Okay.
and I've been in this position
I
for
got you.
well over 11 years.
Thank you. Just trying to distinguish between folks who do administrative work and those who actually work and touch the animals.
Oh, got it, yeah.
Thank you.
Lisa's been a very wonderful and valuable member of the Glaza staff, and we're pleased that she's with us. I would just like to reiterate again that I hope that the City Council will issue an RFP in order to have interested organizations submit their creative ideas for guiding the zoo pardon me, into the future. There have been 39 authorized positions cut since 2008. The zoo director has done an amazing job making certain that animal care is the first priority, but it's the public interactions with the animals that have been affected over these years. For instance, Muriel's Ranch, the contact yard at the Winnick Family Children's Zoo, was closed, and Glaza gradually reopened it several days a week, a couple of hours a day with volunteers. But we just got a grant to to pay for 5 new city employees to work there. That is a terrific thing to do, but were we to change the model, we would be able to really increase the amount of money we bring in to make certain that positions are there.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morgan. Duncan, Eichlin, Brian Levitz. Is there any more cards?
Good morning, council members. My name is Duncan Crabtree Ireland. I'm a member of the Glaza Board of Trustees and also the parent of a 6-year-old child who adores the zoo, as do I. And really, I just wanted to say that I, myself, and the rest of the trustees on the Glaza Board of Trustees understand the fear and concern that comes with this possible change to a public-private partnership of this type, particularly from employees. And we want to speak out and say to you that we are, as a board, our chair is a union member, 2 other members of our Board of Trustees are union member. I'm a full-time employee of a union. We care about employees, and we're not interested in creating an environment where we have substandard employees or unhappy employees, whether they're city employees or whether they're Glaza employees. And in the event that Glaza is the party ultimately at the end of this process, if it goes forward, that you can count on the fact that Glaza cares about its employees and is going to be a place where all employees are happy to work, and a place that's happy to work with unions and others who represent those employees. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brian Levitz, and I work for the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association, where I'm responsible for corporate fundraising and sponsorships. I've been at the zoo for about 2 years, and I've been deeply moved by the common sense of purpose throughout the institution. Everyone is clearly dedicated to animal care, the experience of our visitors, and reaching a broad section of our community. I encounter this at all levels and in all parts of the institution, from zoo department employees to Glaza staff, even to the contracted concession staff. What I've learned in this time, though, is that there is great untapped potential in support from the business community that we're unable to achieve as a result of our dual management structure. I've worked for nonprofit organizations in LA for over 26 years, including the LA Philharmonic, at Disney Hall, the Hollywood Bowl, the LA Opera, and the Museum of Contemporary Art, and they all have strong ties to and support from municipal government. Each of these organizations is able to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in some cases millions, in corporate support as a result of a model where a nonprofit organization in close partnership with municipal government was responsible for building and operating the institution. I encourage the committee to move forward with the RFP process so that we can explore the potential of an alternative management structure and the many ways it can help to fund the mission of the LA Zoo.
Thank you very much. Good. I see Jim Bickhart from the mayor's office here. Jim, could you just state the mayor's position? Thank you. The senior advisor to Mayor Villaraigosa.
Good morning, everybody. Jim Bickhart, Associate Director, Office of the Mayor. I believe by now you've been provided with a copy of the Mayor's June 29th letter to the CAO commenting on the original draft of the RFP, which covers a lot of sort of technical issues in the context of the RFP, and most of which have been responded to by the CAO since by the time of their second draft, the July 15th draft. I don't know if there's yet a third iteration yet. There is one key issue that was not addressed for the second draft of the RFP that has to do with governance structure for whatever entity would take over management of the zoo under such a partnership proposal, and that involves ensuring that there's proper transparency in the governance as the managing entity would be implementing it.
the same that we want at Water and Power, at the harbor, and at the port.
Well, or any department of the city. You have commission.
I got that.
Yeah, you have commissions that have to adhere to the Brown Act. They have to adhere to Public Records Act requirements, and the CAO's. Let's put it this way: the way that they presented the matter was that the Zoo Commission, which is only advisory, would be sufficient to provide that kind of transparency, even though an outside entity could have its own board or its own, managing body. And
why does the mayor want to do this?
Why does the mayor want to do this?
Because the mayor has asked us, as the council, to look at a few things. I want to hear from you. I heard the mayor's quote in the Los Angeles Daily News, and I think that caught him at an off moment, because he said the city doesn't do zoos right. And I haven't seen him personally,
right?
But when I see him personally, I'll give him a hug and tell him I didn't like what that came out. And there's a great zoo there that has dedicated employees but I want to hear for the record, since I got you coming in, I said, and I did this, anybody who comes right in, I ask them the point, what is the mayor's desire in this matter?
Well, at this point, his desire, this project got started a couple of years ago as part of looking at what the core responsibilities of the city are in the context of budgeting. And, the zoo was identified as one of those things that's important to the city, but not necessarily one of the things that we would do in a pinch if there was only 10 things we could do.
You mean you wouldn't care for the animals if we were in a pinch?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
All right, I know. This is what people have told me.
This had to do with...
They tell me it's core. They tell me it's core.
Well, caring for the animals in the context of the zoo or animal services or whatever is definitely a core function.
This is a big step we're asked to take here, and I want to make sure we take the right step on this issue, and that we're all on the same plane. I do think the variety of a city, whatever is core, is the definition of a variety of the people who think of what the word is. But just kind of state the mayor's request to the council to look at this issue. And I know, to make it easier on you, he also asked us to look at the convention center as another possibility.
Right. And, those were the two primary large facilities that were being talked about. The other one, which the council has already dealt with, had to do with parking structures, as I'm sure you'll recall. And I'm not in any way prepared to talk about that issue. No, the basic idea was to raise the question and have a good deliberative discussion over the course of time as to whether or not this and other city functions were central to the city's mission in a time of severely constrained budgets.
Would you say that's true also, let's say in Rec and Parks, at some centers we could get a partnership in a community with the Boys and Girls Club or the Y or other groups as well? Is that what we're looking at? We're looking at community partners?
I remember you bringing up the concept of community partners a couple of meetings ago. I'm not here prepared to get into a far-ranging discussion of that.
Okay.
I'm not the lead person on those kinds of issues in the mayor's office anyway. I happen to be his liaison to the zoo, so that's why I'm here.
Right.
No, whatever I'm saying should be taken in the context of a philosophical and generalized discussion. The mayor is prepared to encourage you to continue the careful vetting process that you're doing. He's pleased to hear all the questions that Councilman Reyes and you have been asking, and hopefully that Councilman Russin will be asking as he participates. And he would like to make sure that all the proper questions are asked and answered to your satisfaction before you make a decision about whether to release the RFP.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. I'll use this analogy of the football stadium. I believe we should look at the football convention center expansion. That doesn't mean a year from now, when all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, that it's something I'm going to support, but I absolutely want to go forward and look at it. Because I feel we have to look at community partners. So I wanted to get the feeling from the mayor's office. The mayor wants us to look at this with a wide spectrum, including his letter in July that stated some concerns that he had. So, Mr. Bickard, thank you. If you still remain, if we have any questions, feel free to call them up later.
I'll be here for the
Thank you.
whole
We
hearing.
do have some cards that we want to ask. Adrian Hawkins, Arlene Sturm, is that correct? Randy Pettit, Carlos Carrillo. Is anybody here? We're calling on the cards right now. Yes, please. And this is a 1-minute comment. If you need a little more, we'll give it to you. And state your name, please.
Good morning, council people. My name is Randy Pettit. I'm one of the plumbers for the Los Angeles Zoo. I've been there 11 years. My family's been plumbing Los Angeles since the 1950s. As we go forward with this, and I thank you for your professionalism and your attention, Councilman Labange, and your concern. One of the things I've learned after being at the zoo for 11 years is what makes the zoo work. And if you didn't see Sunday's Times, we were voted the best zoo in Southern California on Sunday. And that just doesn't happen. That is the animal care.
Park.
Dedicated city worker. Griffith Park, best park, best hiking trails.
What do they say about the councilman, though?
They said we had some of the most handsome in the country, sir.
Those are good brownie points.
My God-given gift is sucking up. So. One of the things I've learned from working in the zoo as the plumber, keeping the facilities up, and we keep comparing it. People keep comparing it to some of the Museum of Contemporary Art and stuff. It's a small city. Rec and Parks gave back their part of the Griffith Park. It kept the buildings like Gracie Lodge and everything, but they gave back the infrastructure. The infrastructure of the zoo is complicated. And that's before the new exhibits come in, which have life support now. But what makes the zoo happen every day for me, and I see it, is consistent, experienced, professional people there. If a keeper changes just from one string to another of animals, it gets complicated. Everything dominoes there. And if you start having people going in and out of the zoo and it becomes a transition zoo for people and not a career zoo, because working at the zoo, there are people with careers, not jobs. The zoo's not a place for people that just want a job. It's for people who have a career and want to invest in those animals. The animals take a lot of care, and you got to be professional. I mean, I've come close a couple of times. You got to be on your game. So if you start this transition of people through the zoo, you risk a lot. You risk losing the infrastructure where it's located, just the locations. I've been there 11 years. I don't know where everything's at, but I know that I can find my way and take care of it. We have not opened late in the 11 years I've been there, and we do water shutdowns, we repipe. There's a lot of people who could learn from the maintenance staff at the zoo in this city.
Thank you. You have a question, Mr. Smith?
Yes, so as a city employee, you've been there 11 years.
I've been there 11 years. I did this building before I went there. That's where they hired me from.
I guess what I'm taking away from your presentation is that even though you're a city employee and the possibility of being moved to another department, the institutional knowledge that you have those 11 years is what cannot be regained if you're replaced. That's
Yeah, every time somebody leaves, you lose something.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Carlos.
Again, my name is Adriana Hawkins. I'm a gardener caretaker for the Los Angeles Zoo, and I'm asking you to consider everything. We work in direct contact with the keepers, and when we go out and cut browse, we let them know. Without that knowledge, if you hire just a mow and blow gardener, they're not going to have that knowledge, whether that's a Ficus benjamini or Ficus lyrata, or if that's a poisonous plant. I mean, we're not just gardeners, we're dedicated horticulturists, and I'm asking the city to look at that and realize that we do make a difference. I mean, we care. I chose the Los Angeles Zoo. I mean, I scored high on my gardener caretaker test, and I had 13 departments send me certs. I chose 3 departments to interview with, but I knew beforehand that I was coming to the LA Zoo because it's the only place for the city where I could work around animals and do horticulture. I mean, we have the best of the best, and it was just proven as we were rated #1. I want you to reconsider what is the rush to privatization. There is no rush. Consider all the facts. This has been city-owned and operated forever. I want you to please consider those facts. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Carlos Flores Carrillo, and I have been with the city for 23 years. It's a pleasure. My family, they are so happy to see me coming to work, and I make a career into the LA Zoo. I never work outside. my city job start right there at the zoo. And let me tell you something. It's very reward to be over there. When the teacher, they come with the student, they say, ask him. They start asking about plant, asking about animals, different behavior, different plant species from where they are coming from, which continent they are from. And the interaction we have over there is not only with the Angelinos, is with the GLASA people, with the security officer we have over there, with custodian, and like a garden caretaker, we have been, working with everybody. And like Adriana say, we feel good, we feel fine, to be a city employee, to be a gardener at the LA Zoo. And if you contract out, for a private company, do they come in to do a city test, to pass the test? I pass, with 99 points. I feel so good. I feel so proud. I use my intelligence, my skill for the city and for the Angelinos. And thank you very much for this opportunity, and please don't privatize the zoo.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Lowell Taylor, Randy Pettit, Arlen, I made that mistake last time. I'm sorry, Arlen. Call me Thomasina. Okay. And Adrian, she spoke? Okay. Good, thank you. Yeah.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Lowell Taylor, and I've been a city employee for the past 8 years, and it's a pleasure for me to come before each and every one of you this morning. And what I'm sitting here for is not just the representation of the zoo, but the zoo in itself is a good place to work, and no one knows that but those that are working there right now. You have good representation of knowing who you're serving, as well as the working with the public there, as well as working with the fellow employees. And nobody knows that better than the staff that's already there. Please consider keeping the LA Zoo like it is.
Thank you. Harlan.
Morning, my name is Arlen Sturm. I've been a truck operator for the Los Angeles Zoo for 13 years. I dump the trash every morning. I drive the packer truck, dump the trash and the animal waste. Take the animal waste up to be recycling. We have our own recycling up in Griffith Park. As far as privatization goes, if a private company were to come in and do the job that I do, they won't have the first clue what they're doing or where things go, how things are supposed to be, the layout of the zoo, the animals, when to make noise, when not to make noise. I start very early in the morning. My job has to be done before the zoo opens. If it were to be privatized, they would really be lost. I don't want to see my job lost to a private company. I don't want to see any city job lost to a private company. Please consider our jobs and keep them public. The zoo is a public place. I hope it remains public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just want to clarify these last cards that I have. Randy Pettit, Randy? Randy? Got it, Randy. Thank you, Randy. Okay, and Carol? Is Carol Carnival there? Excuse me, Carol. Okay. Lowell Taylor and Lowell Goodman. Do we have that? Please. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Carol Carnio. I started at the Los Angeles Zoo as a docent in 1979. My career path took a different turn. I became an animal keeper. I retired a year and a half ago in February of 2010 after completing 20 years. I have been asked to speak this morning on behalf of a number of my animal keeper friends that I left behind. They are very concerned about what eventually will happen with their animals. They're concerned about the outcome of the jobs for the people who have been supporting them in the trenches, so to speak, all these years. our plumbers, our gardeners, our custodians, the commissary workers, everybody. We're like a city. It's a support network. They know how to handle the keepers. They know how to handle the animals. They know when you drive a truck down the road that you don't come barreling down, you know where to park. It's very important to them that everybody be heard, and they're concerned that this is a rush situation, that they would really like the whole process thought out and worked on, and I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Mr. Reyes has a question.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I believe you're the first speaker to mention that you work with the animals. You actually are part of a group that touches the animals and works with them?
Correct.
You mentioned the support system that folks in the trenches, so to speak, as you said. 2 years ago, when this conversation began, were the folks who take care of the animals, people who touch the animals, were they aware of that conversation and the nature of the dialogue?
I will say yes. However, the reason I am here this morning as a retiree is because the people who are still there taking care of the animals want to remain taking care of the animals. At the moment, they have some measure of job security. They are fearful that they will be retaliated against. I know it's a strong word. They are afraid they will be removed from their animals, that they will be sent to another section of the zoo. They are fearful. I am at a point in my life and in my career, you're not going to take my animals away from me. I gave them up voluntarily. I miss them terribly. But I want to help.
I feel it's important to hear the compassion and your sense of commitment to the animals. Ultimately, I think we all are here to have that level of quality, if you will, in how we experience that special moment when we do engage animals. So I appreciate your being here.
Right. I've been in the business world for 50 years. I completed 20 years as a full-time employee at the Los Angeles Zoo. It was the best 20 years of my life.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Hi. And just for the record, Madam City Attorney, this is an open public meeting. Everybody can say anything they want. And if anyone feels that they have been misused or mistreated, please report it to the city attorney's office for whatever reason. Okay, thank you. For the record, thank you. You state your name.
Thank you. My name is Lowell Goodman. I'm a communications specialist with the Service Employees International Union, Local 721, but I'm speaking to you right now as a private citizen of Los Angeles. I actually live in Councilmember Reyes' district. I have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. They love the zoo more than anything. I have seen them grow up at the zoo. We go to the zoo probably 25 times a year. They love the zoo as it is now because it is a zoological park. It is a place where all they see are animals. I have seen Glaza's proposals. I have seen the proposals Glaza has gotten from their consultants, and what I see is that they want to Disneyfy the zoo. They want to put in a lot more retail. They want to put in more rides. They want to put in things that you have to pay for. As a parent, I don't want to be nagged by my children for things. I don't want them to be begging me to buy them things. I want them to go see animals and be in a place where the only experience they have is one of animal interaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the record, sometime after 1926, in the 1930s and 40s, Walt Disney came to Griffith Park, took his daughters to the merry-go-round in the central part of the park, and that's where he visioned Disneyland. And I happen to like Disneyland, but I understand what you mean as a parent and whatever you called it, being nagged. But that's part of life. It's tough to do that. But I just wanted to put a little plug in for Walt, who got his vision from the merry-go-round in Griffith Park some years ago, told to me by his daughter, Diane,
No, I love that statement because the realities of parenting are...
Right, exactly. So that's good. Now, the last card I have, but I think they spoke, Lowell Taylor? Already spoke, got it all. All right, that's very good. So, hey, at this time, I know we have some questions, but we want to go through the report of the CAO. Mr. Lewis is our zoo director here. Mr. Lewis, would you like to speak now or a little later, or I want to give it up to you, whatever feels comfortable? And you're a professional who came to Los Angeles and been of great leadership in what you do. I have great admiration for you. Our CAO came east on Temple Street from the county. And the concept that I, as a representative, kind of share a little bit, and I know you got a little county blood in you, is the Natural History Museum, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art on Wilshire, and the Hollywood Bowl, which I would all of us say are A-plus facilities, has transformed into this what we call public-community partnership. And trying to mirror that type of situation. I don't want to Disneyfy a place, but I do want it as clean as Disneyland, wherever we are. I know that's a thing. But at the same time, this process is taking its place, and I share with my colleagues the great love of the zoo, the great respect for the employees. But every time we talk about the zoo, it's like, we're in trouble. We're in the principal's office. We're not in the principal's office. We're having a discussion to see if we can have a better relationship that enhances the life of the zoo, the quality of its experience for all, and the education. And it wasn't just because they had to fill space. The hard work of many created that #1 ranking as the best zoo that was in the Los Angeles Times last Sunday. So, Mr. CAO, if you want to give us a little overview, and thank you.
Thank you. Since we last met, we were asked to respond to a number of questions. We have since submitted a number of communications, including a memorandum that specifically addresses the questions that were raised. We did a very straightforward question and answer that's several pages, as well as a PowerPoint. We've issued somewhere close to 5 different reports, including an independent report from KPMG to look at the analysis, to ask a lot of the questions you've been asking. At this point in time, the issues that are before you I think are very legitimate issues, and many of them will be responded to once we actually know what the proposals look like. In terms of how the zoo would change, if it would change in terms of the environment that it is, we will have a better sense of that once we receive the proposals. There are some issues that have been raised that I think have been helpful in further developing our thinking around this issue. One of the issues is around transparency, and I think it was raised by someone from the public about the role of the commission. I think one of the things that you may want to consider is to strengthen the role of the commission, give it greater authority and oversight when it comes to this new model, and even under the existing model, perhaps, if that's what you choose to do. Maybe look at the qualifications of the commissioners themselves to require that they have specific experience around the taking care of animals, so that you have the assurances and those meetings be public, that they play an oversight role as it relates to the contract, working with us as the administrators of that contract, should we move in that same regard. There was an issue raised regarding the existing MOUs. All of the existing MOUs will continue in place. The MOUs are with the City of Los Angeles, they're not with the zoo. And so the City of Los Angeles isn't going anywhere. It's going to be here under the existing model, under the future model. And so we would, when those MOUs expire, we will continue. The current employees, not one single employee will be laid off as a result of this transaction. The bumping issues that were raised, what we're looking to do is provide opportunities through the system as vacancies develop. The future for the city as a whole is If our intention is to avoid layoffs as we move forward, we know we're facing structural deficits in the future. If our intention is to avoid laying off any more employees, then we have to make sure that we don't add new employees to our system. And so instead of bringing somebody in from the outside who we can't afford to maintain, our goal is to continue to reorganize ourselves so that we could afford the people that we have now. And so the concept behind that is actually an effort to avoid any layoffs, to avoid future pressures on the rest of the system. And so with that, I'll be happy to respond to any more specific questions that you have that we haven't responded to in writing so far.
Mr. West?
Under normal circumstances, and trust me, the city is not in normal circumstances, I would not entertain the idea at all of making a request for a proposal. But these are difficult times, challenging times, and I think we have a responsibility to ask the question. And that's basically what we're doing. If we were to move this, that doesn't mean that automatically the zoo is going to be privatized.
That's correct.
What that means is we're going to go out and say, hey guys, can you do things better for us, such and such, what have you. It may come back and we're not satisfied with it. But one thing that's important, I think, to me, is over the past few years, we've seen just how the partnership that we've been able to create with our city employees. And if it weren't for them, I don't think that we'd be in the position that we are today, because I don't want to use the word concessions, but they were creative, and they did a lot of things because they love the city, they love the government, and they want to keep it afloat. In my view, they have some legitimate concerns, and I've had discussions with them, brief discussions with you, and I met with the people of GLAZA as well. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to amend the CAO's report, and it's my understanding that you have some amendments as well that would afford us the opportunity to proceed where it relates to the request for proposal, but concurrently, all of the concerns that were mentioned by our labor partners, we would study those as well. So at the end of the day, we would have two different plans to select from. If, in my opinion, if we don't do it that way, you go out for proposal, what's going to happen is basically, I don't see him here, but Jim Bickart was here earlier. We went out on the parking structures. Okay, we went out on the parking structures, and then you saw a variety of motions asking to study this and study that, and then it took 8 months, and we missed the window. If there was ever an opportunity to make any profit, we blew it. So I think it's a common sense approach that we do it this way, concurrently, where they both come back at the same time. And where it relates to the language, we can pass it around, or we can have the clerk or whoever the appropriate person read it. But that, I think that if we were to do that, then I would be comfortable in voting.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Wesson, and for your work on that. Mr. Reyes?
Well, I'll second that motion. The questions that have been generated are results of concern for not only the animals, also for the overall sense of what will happen in the future. And in speaking to Director Lewis, trying to get to a level of consistency in terms of how we can have some rhythm, some momentum that creates comfort zones, not only for the animals, but for the people who are tending to them, so they can have a peace of mind in terms of they know where they will be in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years. And that adds to, I believe, morale and a sense of a mission, if you will, of what is my role there as individuals. And so I believe by taking that motion, we'll try to get to some level of consistency in how we perform, not only as human beings, but for an environment, given the complexities of every ecosystem that these animals live in. But in terms of questions, and when we look at the latest report back from the CAO, Mr. Santana, there is estimates that 250,000 to 500,000 could be generated from corporate sponsorship. Does this amount include any other potential off-site signage anywhere on city-owned land?
No, it's a conservative estimate, and part of what we need to resolve is the issue of signage as a whole. There are two issues related to that. The first is, the overall policy, which, is currently in discussion and being debated amongst the department, the city attorney's office, my office, CLA. The second is really the restrictions around the specific bond issuances. This applies whether we're managing it or it's under a different structure. There is a limit behind how much private use you could have when you issue a public bond. So it would depend on which building it is, how that is maintained, what percentage of the overall use, to ensure that we're consistent with the tax exempt status of those bonds.
That does beg the question, what percentage of the zoo capital projects come from tax exempt bonds?
Well, I mean, the specific percentage, it's 100%. The entire zoo itself was financed by the public.
So
there is a portion of it that GLAZA has been able to reimburse the city for, and I know in the new pachydermit exhibit that was just recently opened, the city has an agreement with GLAZA. They have been fundraising to provide support for that particular piece, but it's also been true throughout at different elements. So the initial debt was issued by the city, and GLAZA would raise money to help cover the debt service for a portion of the debt that the city covered.
So if we have a new private operator, does this mean that these bonds will be in jeopardy?
No. We've spoken to bond counsel. The way the final agreement would ultimately determine exactly how we ensure that there is no jeopardy. The jeopardy lies in the use. If we were to change the mission of the zoo and make it into a Disneyland, where we would charge a much higher rate, it wouldn't be about if we were to do that, that would violate the purpose behind the bonds. The bonds were approved by the voters to maintain the zoo as a public asset, to maintain it as a affordable option for Angelinos, and the specific programmatic pieces. And so the use of it is what's critical. That's why the final answer will be based on the proposal that we receive. My office will not recommend moving forward with any proposal that puts those bonds in jeopardy. And so we will know at that point in time whether or not there is any jeopardy, and if in fact that's the case, we will not be recommending moving forward.
One last question. When we look at your report, there's a statement, the committee supports the free parking for all Griffith Park visitors in use. Is this an official policy of the city or the zoo?
It's my understanding that there's been some concern. The councilman can certainly add to that. It's his district. He understands this issue better than I do. That the parking be free for everyone in that community. And there's also an agreement with the Gene Autry Museum to maintain a significant portion of that parking as free.
Just for the record, Mr. Reyes, after 1978, when there was a tsunami or an earthquake of governance due to the passage of Proposition 13, the Department of Recreation and Parks, which then operated the zoo, and the park system did look to charge $1 a day and 50 cents on weekdays, $1 on weekends. That was rejected. Van Griffin, the son of Colonel Griffith, came, and there was a big community effort. I was involved in that effort. It was before I was elected. But we did turn the tide to stop the charge for that. The one question we got to ask ourselves, and this is through a process, is there, let's say, 100 spaces that would enhance the ability to raise revenue to help keep the lights on, if I could say that, and that the prime, let's say, closest to the entrance spaces in this is a tough one, in a non-discriminatory way would be that some people in the town, and I do not believe it, but people go out real late at night, and in Hollywood, they pay $80 to $100 for a parking space at a nightclub. And it's after 11 o'clock. I think that's too late at night and too expensive for anyone to pay that. But they pay $80. Not that they would pay $80 to park, but let's say if there was and I'm just being descriptive of, I've been to 30 zoos in the world, a parking meter head that was that of an animal, and that was, or something of this nature here. I'm using it as a description, and you put your card in, and the revenue went to the zoo operation in a limited number of spaces where, 70 to 80% of the spaces were free and open. But if we decided to do that, that may be something I would not be offended with, but I would be offended with if we had another councilman, not the chair of the committee, but one on the finance committee wants to charge for parking there, and I don't want to charge for parking there, because many other people use it. People park and run, and
So the bottom line is that it's not codified anywhere within our books that it has to remain free. So then that does beg the question, and Councilor LaBonge alluded to it, that it's possible that a private entity would have the flexibility to charge for parking in the future.
Not without your authority. That
Right.
would have to be authorized by your council, but we will look into the specific history, but that's something that's being discussed even in the context of the city managing the zoo.
we charge at the
We
Greek
just-
Theater right now.
Right.
But that's an event. I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, just to add to this, John Lewis, Director of the Zoo, we just completed an extensive study on the potential for charging during this last budget process.
Oh, yeah, that's a very
And the
good point.
potential is there, but the reality is we do not have the infrastructure in the parking lot, the conduits, the wiring, the IT connections to institute what are the common systems around the city right now. So
Right.
there's a requirement for investment to do that.
Right.
And then the payback doesn't come for several years.
Well, taking a step back and bigger picture, I keep worrying about the folks who can't afford to get to the beach,
Right.
can't afford to get to Disneyland.
Right.
And so the hardships of paying for parking and entrance fees, et cetera, begins to accumulate. So from a bigger picture point of view, as a zoo for the Los Angeles population, I just want to keep that as a high priority.
Right.
And this is the last question. The current concession agreement expires in 2016. Does the city have legal right to change the terms through negotiation of the agreement or increase revenue now? Do we have that built into this agreement that's supposed to go to 2016?
We do have that right. We currently have an MOU with Glaza to operate the concession, so it would require revisiting those MOUs and how the city wants to approach it.
Right.
But I would caution us to be very careful about that, because one of the problems that we have at the zoo is that we don't have control over our purchasing power and our purchasing authority. So, we don't want to get those nice notes that say we can't buy hot dogs anymore because the city hasn't paid that bill. We have that problem in our construction area all the time. Some department has a complaint about an invoice, has nothing to do with the zoo. Our maintenance staff tries to order concrete, and they can't get concrete because there's an issue somewhere else in the zoo. So if we're going to do that, we need to look very carefully about how the zoo can do business as a concessionaire.
So it goes back to the point of consistency.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr.
Yeah,
Weston.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a request of you that the clerk would read my amendments, because I'd like to find out from the CAO if he's comfortable.
Mr. Curl, the good job that you do, would you read it into the record? And if you would make note, do you have a copy of it as well?
Yes, I do.
So make note of it, and then if there's anything you want to afterwards. But read it into the record.
Certainly. The Arts, Parks, Health, and Aging Committee should recommend to the City Council a two-track approach to the development of an alternative management system for the Los Angeles Zoo and Botanical Gardens in addition to the proposed RFP process. There should be a study to provide a blueprint to enable the committee to determine which alternative management system, the one generated by the RFP or one developed independent of the RFP, would best serve the city's interest. This study would provide an overall concept of how the zoo might be financed and managed moving forward in a way that would allow the city to realize substantial savings to the general fund through increased efficiencies in operations and could be realized over the next 5 years. Some of the questions have already been addressed. However, the city should develop a comprehensive look at what alternatives could be considered. Among the issues that should be considered include all concession agreements and all subcontracting involving retail, marketing, advertising, food services, concession machines, stroller rentals, etc., to determine how these terms might be favorable to the city and the cost effectiveness of the city developing contracting for these concessions. An analysis of bond indebtedness and the long-term plan for covering those costs. The evaluation of a revolving fund or enterprise fund benefiting the zoo and keeping revenue generated by the zoo for operations within the zoo. The zoo's hours of operation, including an analysis of the potential to increase revenue by extending the hours of operation into the evenings during peak seasons and the result on revenue from tickets, memberships, and concessions. Obtaining grants for projects in keeping with the mission and greening of the zoo, for example, converting bio-waste to energy as other zoos have undertaken. Examining untapped potential within the zoo grounds, for example, using unused grounds to grow specialized feed and potentially minimize its purchase. Potential revenue from parking and exploring valet parking as a parking option. Analysis of a purchasing collaborative with other zoos to take advantage of economies of scale, and examining potential lease options of select zoos, including the grounds that don't require an alternative management structure. Therefore, the study should be conducted in a manner that incorporates feedback from the zoo's leadership, contract inspection staff, and/or Bureau of Engineering staff, workers assigned to the zoo, and others, including administrators in public and privatized zoos elsewhere in the country. Additionally, that the report be developed by the city administrative officer, the chief legislative analyst, and the zoo management to be completed to coincide with the release of the RFP results.
Thank you very much. CAO.
No, I think these are all good questions to ask, and would support the council member's motion in doing this on a two-track manner, so that when the final recommendation is before you with the outcome of the RFP, you also have a separate report that looks at an alternative structure that responds to all of these questions.
This would be, you could do this analysis in the next week or two and prepare it to come to council?
I think what I'm hearing, perhaps we need clarification, is this, what I'm understanding this motion to do is to basically concurrent to the RFP process. So the RFP would be released. During that point in time, we would be getting responses from various parties, and then when a final recommendation is brought before you, then we will have both the outcome of the RFP as well as a comprehensive report that addresses all the various issues. Is this correct in my understanding?
Yes, that is correct. So it's not like we're asking them to come back in 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
I want them to take their time, do it right, be very creative.
The choice in the end of the process, that we could have this as another choice.
And we'll have a first run at it here in this committee. It's supposed to go into council, is that?
Well, it would come concurrent to your committee with the outcome of the RFP. So
to this committee?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can I add something else there? I want to move that the council instruct the CAO to include the following provisions under this alternative management structure: that the zoo department remain a city department. You have any problem with that?
No, I think that's consistent if you look at the models that we're looking at, that they remain government departments.
All right, and also the CAO would manage and oversee the operating agreement with the community partner. Okay, now I want to say community partner. I know it's not, but I think privatization scares people, but partnerships are necessary in this world. Our collaboration is key for our success in the future. With the advent of the last several years, the Library Foundation, Recreation Park started a foundation, Cultural Affairs started a foundation. GLAZA, which is a great community partner, 73,000 families strong for all those years, whoever that may be, but community partner as opposed to privatize. I know you wrote that in one of the reports. I like that. That means you heard what I said. But I want to say that, is this a privatized effort, do you see? Or what did the county do when you were at the county because I thought that was more of a partnership.
Well, it is a partnership because it connects individuals in the community who are advocates for the arts, or in this case the zoo, who believe in the mission of the zoo with the city, and which is government, to bring the best about outcome for those who visit the zoo. So I agree with you. Referring it to a community partnership it reflects in a more accurate way what we're trying to do here.
And then also that the Board of Commissioners would continue to exist as they have now in their functions and currently, and the issue of transparency be enhanced if you could, because we are still a city department, how that works best for the zoo. I would want that. And then also that this recommendation contains a supplemental report on this to the Los Angeles Zoo Alternative Management Structure Status Report. Request authority to release this document, be advised. I just want to see us do the right thing, and I see this as this, ladies and gentlemen. I do love the passion. I've worked for the city 37 years, so when I look at zoo employees, I see that as I look at other employees, people who really care about their jobs. They work for the city of Los Angeles, they work at the zoo, and they feel good every day that they come home after they contribute their mission. I look at GLAZA or other institutions, whether it's the Museum Associates or the Philharmonic, they love these institutions in this city, and they try to do something. So all of us are good. What we're asking for is an architect, and you're the architect, Mr. CAO, at a request of a mayor and a council to come back with us with a menu that may give us a better opportunity in the future that also protects that passion that the zoo employees have, that the department is there, and does make economic sense. I don't want to go into a partnership if it makes it more bureaucratic. What Mr. Lewis said about just the simple order of a material may be held up because of another process. The zoo has to be its own world if we're going to be successful in the future. So I do want to ask Mr. Lewis, because if you had anything you want to add to this, or to contribute in any way. I know you've been involved. Thank you.
Just a couple of comments. I don't think I have too much else to add, but I want to say one thing for the record. There is no intent, and it will not be tolerated for anybody at the zoo to retaliate against employees for speaking their mind and participating in this process. I'm glad to hear this idea of going forward, because I think that's the essence of the problem. We have been talking about this at the zoo for over 2 years. Managing change is hard enough, but as you know, I've been excluded from managing that change. The employees are not getting all the information. They're getting one-sided information, and I would like us to move forward and then make a decision whether this is a good idea, so we can answer those questions and manage it. But I would just, again, say to the employees that if they feel like they are being retaliated against, contact my office, contact the HR office at the zoo. If they're not comfortable with that, come to the chair of this committee, because I know he'll call me, right. And we won't tolerate it.
I'll call the city attorney.
Whether it's this issue or any other issue.
Right.
That's not the environment we want.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, there's something that was said today, and I know it's about a sequence of events, and listening to the CAO, Mr. Santana, I'm going to try to be as clear as possible. We have current city employees in the zoo. The notion is to save jobs in the future and to maintain jobs. Folks who work with the zoo today will be offered to move into another area in the city, so that way there's less folks on the payroll. Now, maybe it can't be answered, maybe it's part of the RFP process, but for the peace of mind of the workers that have come here today, are we saying we're going to move them because we need to move them out of the zoo? Or are we going to give them an option to stay with the zoo as long as they want, given all the management issues that go with it and all the other? That's what's confusing to me. Are we saying because we're going to move in this direction, Are we going to move the people out as soon as possible? Are we going to allow an environment where they would choose to move if there's an opening?
Well,
That's what I'm trying to understand.
It's first important to point out that the majority of the employees at the zoo are in positions that are specific for the zoo. So there isn't a position in transportation or somewhere else.
But you do have plumbers, you do have landscaping.
So for those positions. Now, keep in mind, this is a 25-year contract or relationship. And so during that 25 years, there will be attrition that takes place throughout the cities. People will retire, people will move to a different position, and that will create vacancies throughout the system. It is our overall strategy or hope that before we hire someone from the outside and add to the pension cost, the healthcare cost, the compensation costs, that we would offer positions to individuals in the zoo and other areas to fill in those vacancies. Some people may choose to do that. Others may prefer to stay in the zoo for whatever reason.
It's an option.
So we want to maintain it as much of an option as possible because, as been indicated by individuals representing the workers, is that people develop a relationship, and it's more than just the work that they do, but there's a commitment to the mission. And so that is our primary goal, is to minimize the disruption to the organization and how it's managed, and certainly to the animals and to those who come in and experience the zoo.
Thank you, Mr.
So, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Weston, any questions? No, good. Okay, with those suggestions by Mr. Weston and myself, Mr. Clerk, want to add it to the record? And if you would, add that, if you need it in writing, we'll provide it in writing. And also, that if we feel strongly we're going to send this out, we're going to send it to council first. And if our colleagues agree with us that at some point in the future, in the next 6 months, would you think, Mr. Santana, there would be a RFP issued?
Yes.
And then there would be discussion if it's valued, as whether they accept it or reject it or whatever, but we keep that interest in mind with the sensitivities.
So there's only one action coming from this committee, that is to go on the dual track.
Well, yeah, both with what Mr. Weston said and what I said. I absolutely, as we all agree, want this to be a city department, and in the fashion that it is, but look for the partnership that's necessary.
So it's the same motion then?
Same motion, the RFP, but Mr. Weston's motion too. And if you see something when you come to council, you could always,
Out of principle, and only because of the nature of this discussion this morning, I would rather be in a position to say, to support and second Councilmember Weston's motion, to move that forward. And that would be what I would like to support at this time. That would be the only thing I would support.
You don't want to support mine?
Well, you're amending?
Yeah, well, no, I'm not amending. I'm just adding to.
In order
That's what I'm trying to
in order
understand.
to do that, we'd have to separate it. Basically, what I've done is amended this into the CAO's report so that we go forward with both tracks. And I would think that would, and I could be wrong, I would think that would elevate the comfort level of our labor partners because it creates a level playing field.
And the amendments that were included or suggested by Councilor Labange is also going to be part of your actions?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I understood the amendments that Mr. Labange presented put greater clarity on the one track that involves the RFP. So what he's asking is that if we were to pursue this alternative community partnership, that at the end of the day, the zoo will continue being a city department. There will be, and so that's what I understood the amendment to say.
No, if Councilor Weston and Councilor Labange are in unison in sending that forward on a dual track, I'm fine with that.
Right.
Yes.
And that works for our objectives, based on the mayor's request.
That's correct.
Thank you. So we're all going to go unanimous on that, and we would look to hopefully Wednesday, August 17th, if that works, Mr. Clerk, with the agenda. So we could have this discussed in council? Does that work? August-
Just that.
You could look August 16th and
I'm out of
17th?
town that day, that week, but that's, you know.
Well, then, here's the key. The key is, as good as this plan is, it will go forward even if you're not there.
That's right.
Because we believe in it. That's the real key. Now, what would be another date, just because I don't want to do that to you?
Councilmember Labange, Wednesday, the 10th is Council Revenue Day. Would you like to try to request this be heard on that day, or?
Well, I don't want to compare this with revenue, because I think this is a very important, I understand that, but it's a different revenue. It's not the convention center that we're looking for people who come from around the world to go here. This is
On the 16th, I'll be out of town as well, National League of Cities.
All right, we'll do it the 10th if you feel that would be...
We also have the 12th, the 16th, 17th, and Friday the 19th prior to council recess.
What's the 12th look like for you? That's, I think, does that work? Okay, it doesn't work for everybody, but it works for... Okay. Okay, unless, we will all be notified, but we'll look for the 12th, the Friday the 12th.
Friday the 12th.
Right.
Okay,
Of August.
and for the record, both your motion and Councilmember Wesson's motions will be incorporated into the recommendations for council action.
Correct. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Councilmember, we still have two other items on the agenda.
Okay. Want to continue?
I'm sorry?
What do we need to do with it? Yeah, got it.
Did you recommend continuing those two items, the budget recommendations?
Necessary to this, correct?
Correct.
It's a receive and file, I believe.
Those could both be received and filed?
Yeah.
Or noted and filed?
Let's note it and file. But don't have it in council. I don't want to complicate the council's focus on the issue.
Okay.
Mr. CAO. We can note it and file them, but we'll schedule it at some future date. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, Miguel.